Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Jai Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana. Yamunatira Vanachari. Yamunatira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Mr. Bhagavad Paramahamsa. Padavajikacharya Ashtotar to the Sri Srimad, Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Padavajikacharya Ashtotar to the Sri Srimad, Divine Grace, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai. Ananda Koti Vaishnavinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavad Gita Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glory to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Okay. Text 70, right? What happened? The light is on. Oh my God. What'll happen? It's just my, here. Hey. The flashlight, this tends to go on, yeah. Okay. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Okay, sorry. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. On this 29th day of March 2022 in San Diego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. We are in the second chapter, contents of the Gita summarized, text 70 at the bottom of page 134. Apuyamanam achalapatishtam samudram apa pravishanti yadvad tadvat kama yam pravishanti sarve sashantim apnoti nakama kami apuyamanamachalapatishtam samudramapa pravishanti yadvat tadvat kama yang pravishanti sarve sashantim apnoti nakama kami apuyamanamachalapatishtam samudramapa pravishanti yadvat tadvat kamayam pravishanti sarve sashantim apnoti nakama kami apuyamanamachalapatishtam samudramapa pravishanti yadvat tadvat kamayam pravishanti sarve sashantim apnoti nakama kami apuyamanamachalapatishtam samudramapa pravishanti yadvat tadvat kamayam pravishanti sarve sashantim apnoti nakama kami. Anyone else want to try? Anyone on Zoom? All right, let's proceed. Apuyamanam, always being filled. Achalapatishtam, steadily situated. Samudram, the ocean. Apaha, waters. Pravishanti, enter. Yadvat, as. Tadvat, so. Kamaha, desires. Yam, unto whom. Pravishanti, enter. Sarve, all. Saha, that person. Shantim, peace. Apnoti, achieves. Na, not. Kamakami, one who desires to fulfill. One who desires to fulfill desires. Okay. Translation. A person who is not disturbed by the incessant flow of desires that enter like rivers into the ocean, which is ever being filled but is always still, can alone achieve peace, and not the man who strives to satisfy such desires. Purport. Although the vast ocean is always filled with water, it is always, especially during the rainy season, being filled with much more water. But the ocean remains the same, steady. It is not agitated, nor does it cross beyond the limit of its brink. This is also true of a person fixed in Krishna consciousness. As long as one has the material body, the demands of the body for sense gratification will continue. The devotee, however, is not disturbed by such desires because of his fullness. A Krishna-conscious man is not in need of anything because the Lord fulfills all his material necessities. Therefore, he is like the ocean, always full in himself. Desires may come to him like the waters of the rivers that flow into the ocean, but he is steady in his activities, and he is not even slightly disturbed by desires for sense gratification. That is the proof of a Krishna-conscious man, one who has lost all inclinations for material sense gratification, although the desires are present. Because he remains satisfied in the transcendental loving service of the Lord, he can remain steady like the ocean, and therefore enjoy full peace. Others, however, who want to fulfill desires even up to the limit of liberation, what to speak of material success, never attain peace. The fruitive workers, the salvationists, and also the yogis who are after mystic powers are all unhappy because of unfulfilled desires. But the person in Krishna consciousness is happy in the service of the Lord, and he has no desires to be fulfilled. In fact, he does not even desire liberation from the so-called material bondage. The devotees of Krishna have no material desires, and therefore they are in perfect peace. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnanandana Shalakaya Chakshu Unmilitam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, but my spiritual master, Srila Prabhupada, opened my eyes with the torch of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance unto him and all members of Sri Parampara. So we have to kind of understand the terminology here. The translation says, a person who is not disturbed by the incessant flow of desires that enter like rivers into the ocean, which is ever being filled, but is always still. So what this means is that there's an incessant flow before our eyes, our ears, senses, of things that we can enjoy. But the Krishna conscious person, fully Krishna conscious, which means that he's tasting at every moment the pleasure of bhakti rasa. This bhakti rasa is the enjoyment, the pleasure that comes from serving Krishna, glorifying Krishna, being Krishna conscious. That obliterates the desire. In other words, some beautiful woman comes in front of you, you see, which would normally, without any Krishna consciousness, evoke desires to enjoy. But because you're enjoying within, it doesn't happen. And also it depends on knowledge. You know, oh, this is a living entity. And that living entity is encased in this body of a young woman. But what is that body? In other words, you're not, the illusion that Maya will cast over practically everybody who's conditioned says, it's just Atma Buddhi, Yasya Atma Buddhi, Kuna Petri Dhatake. This is a verse spoken by Krishna in the 10th canto. He's saying that one who identifies himself with this bag full of three dhatus. The three dhatus, this is the Ayurvedic thing. Mucus, bile, and air. Which one of those is really attractive, turns you on? The air is not fresh air either. So, in other words, that's what it is, objectively speaking. It's got bones, you got blood, you got all kinds of unmentionables in there. It's not intrinsically attractive. But Maya, you know, the covering and makes it attractive. Am I wrong?
I was just going to say that visually it's attractive. So you just said the mind makes it attractive.
Yeah. Visually it's attractive. Yeah. But the point is, if you're already experiencing a pleasure within, you can see the reality. Okay. It's just like a doll could be visually attractive, but it's a wooden doll. It's not really attractive. You know, it's meant to kind of just sell some clothes or something that's on a mannequin. The point is that the realized soul is a person who's at this level that Krishna's been speaking about, who's in samadhi, who's always thinking of Krishna, who meets the qualifications that we've been reading about, is not disturbed. The example of the ocean is there. In other words, you're deep like the ocean. Just think of Haridas Thakur. Haridas Thakur, he was chanting Hare Krishna incessantly. And he was not just chanting, but completely absorbed in the holy name, relishing the holy name, seeing Krishna in the holy name, you know. So then, you know the story. This Ramchandra Khan became envious. I think he was a Muslim, and Haridas Thakur had been a Muslim, but he was now converted to a Hindu. So he wanted to humiliate Haridas Thakur by seducing him with a prostitute. So one very, very fortunate, young, attractive prostitute volunteered for the job. So in the middle of the night, you know, Haridas Thakur was not old at this time. He was in his early 30s, if that, you know, prime of life. So he's sitting there in the moonlight, you know, in his ashram, chanting Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare, you know. And she approaches and makes herself known and, you know, makes it very clear what she's up to. And Haridas says, yes, I really want to enjoy with you, but I've taken a vow, this is in the CC, I've taken a vow to chant 1 million or 10 million names this month. That's, figure 30 times 300,000 is about 10 million. And so that was his quota, 300,000 a day. So he said, I haven't yet finished my daily round, so you just sit there and, you know. So he's chanting until the sun rises. So she was disappointed. And he said, please forgive me, but you come back tonight, and I'll surely be able to finish by that time, so you come. So she goes off and she tells Ramchandra Khan what happened, and she says, "Well, just let me be with him one time, and then you can come and arrest him and humiliate him." So okay, so the plan was still on. So she comes back and Hare Krishna, the moonlight is there, And he says, "I'm very, very sorry. I haven't finished my rounds just yet, but please just sit here. I'm sure to be finished." Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. So what's she going to do? It's all night. So she starts chanting also. And then the third night, the same thing happens. She realizes, okay, this is a saint. He's not going to be. And she has become purified, and she begs his forgiveness. She bows down. And says, and Hari says, "Look, I knew what Ramchandra Khan was up to. I just stayed here for your benefit." So now, she prays to him. Well, how can I be purified? You just, give away all your property to the Brahmins. You can take this spot. He has an ashram there. You have this spot, and you just worship Tulsi and chant Hare Krishna. Everything will be provided for you. And she became a great devotee. People came; they would give her all the food she needed and everything. And he just went off. So he was protected. The vairagya was extremely strong. Vairagya meaning detachment. And I wanted to make a point here. So that's what's being spoken of here. Somewhat like the ocean is already full with Krishna consciousness. And if some little river of impetus for enjoyment comes, stimulation, it doesn't find any purchase there. But for conditioned souls, you're being victimized by this and that desire coming into your mind and going one after another. That's the problem. Yeah, go ahead. You need the mic because there are people out there. We didn't activate the mics. No. Yeah, just wait. It'll be 30 seconds. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna.
So I understand and agree with everything you're saying. So an appetite is an appetite regardless if it's for the tongue, for food or eating or sexual appetites. Is that fair to say, right?
What was it that you said?
So what we're talking about is trying to control or defeat our Maya appetites.
Okay.
So what you're describing, of course, is a sexual appetite.
Right.
So I'm going to say this. So when you're saying we're full, you're full so you don't have that problem. If I'm full, okay, and I'm sitting in the restaurant and I'm full.
Yeah.
I've just finished, I'm having coffee, I've had my dessert, I'm relaxing in the restaurant. But if a waiter walks by with a beautiful, well, now I'm not a meat eater, but in the past.
Well, just think if you're in Govinda's, like perfectly made samosas, a whole tray of like.
Okay, let's say that. Okay,
Yeah.
Beautiful tray, I'm in a vegetarian restaurant,
Yeah.
and that tray comes by. I'm obviously not going to order that food.
No, you're
because I'm
full.
But I will look at that food and say, wow, that looks great.
Yeah.
So the desire is not for me. I can only talk for me. The desire is not, even when I'm 100% full, I'm still looking at the food and go, wow, I'm going to get that next time. And I'm thinking about it. Maybe, am I that full I can't get it?
Yeah.
I don't watch it go by and go, that's beautiful. I don't need it. No, I don't think like that. So does that come also?
No, but you're talking about how the mind is also contemplating next time and so forth. So the mind is involved. The point is, when the mind is on Krishna and you're relishing at every moment the remembrance and the glorification and the service of Krishna, then these objects that come, even the desire is not going to be awakened. That's one of the points I wanted to make in this purport, because when it's a person who is not disturbed by the incessant flow of desires, what's meant there is not the desires flowing, but the impetuses that would normally evoke a desire. You see what I'm saying? In other words, the flow of stimuli that are coming in, who normally would disturb someone, either positively or negatively. These that enter the ocean, which is ever being filled, but always can alone achieve peace. Not the man who strives to satisfy such desires, or who responds to the stimuli and tries to enjoy them. So that's what's being mentioned here. It is always during the raising. Okay, true of the person fixed in Krishna. As long as the one is material body, the demands of the body for sense gratification will continue. The devotee, however, is not disturbed by such desires because of his fullness. So in other words, we meet the necessities of the body, keep body and soul together. This is right in the Bhagavatam. Kamasinendriya priti, labo jiveta yavata. This is in the 2nd chapter, 1st canto. There's a whole series of verses about Dharma. What is the supreme Dharma? We made a little book out of it. If you ever go on that rack, you see Dharma, the way of transcendence. It's based on these series of verses. So what is he saying there? Kamasinendriya priti, that you should never... Indriya priti is literally sense gratification. One should not try to enjoy the senses and according to kama, your strong lusty desires. One should fulfill the needs of the body as far as possible, live as simply as possible. And then what should one do with one's life energy? Jivasya tattva jigyasa. One should live in order to inquire and into the truth, the absolute truth. This is an echo right from the Vedanta Sutra. Nato yasche karmavi. Nothing else should be the goal of one's works. So this is a very radical, proposal. This is an advanced position, but it's something we should aim for. In other words, as human beings, we have the power to say no to the senses and direct our mental energy and our intellectual energy elsewhere. Every student in college knows this. Is that there's a temptation. Are you going to call your girlfriend and spend an hour on the phone, or are you going to study the books? Are you going to prepare for the exam, or are you going to party tonight, get high? I mean, this is the college life. I know that. I was in college. It was 47 years ago. Was it that? No, it was longer than that. Anyway, 57. Sorry, 1965. Huh? Yes, you attempt to do both, but you can ruin your college career easily by getting into sense gratification too much. In other words, there has to be the higher intelligence that has the goal in mind. Oh, I got to get my degree. I have to succeed, or I can't just try to enjoy all the time. And there are people who flunk out because of that. So we don't want to flunk out. In other words, this is the description of someone who's reached that platform, who's steady, in spite of whatever kind of stimuli come to him, positive or negative. He remains shanti. This is where the shanti comes in, because you're experiencing the flow internally of Krishna bhakti rasa. That's the only way to do it. You can't do it just by force of will. Eventually, you fail with that. So this is what's being described here, and the idea is that the desires aren't there. It's not or the desires are minimized. Let's say they're minimized for someone who is enjoying the higher taste. You may even call this verse, the 4th canto. This is from the 4 Kumaras teaching Maharaj Prithu. Very important instructions, and this is near the end. He says, "Yat pada pankaja palasa vilasa bhaktya." That's the first line. And what it means is, pada pankaja is a word for lotus feet. Someone who is serving the lotus feet, pada pankaja palasa of the Lord, and experiencing thereby bhakti vilas, the vilas. This is a word for spiritual pleasure, the spiritual pleasure of meditating and serving Krishna's lotus feet. Then karmashayan, aspirations to enjoy fruit of activity, sense gratification, are like knots in the heart. Gratitam udgratiyanti. Those knots are untied or they're cut. For the santas, santa is another word for saint. It's the same word in English. But others who may be very austere, the yogis, the jnanis, the Mayavadis are much more austere than we are. But they don't have any bhakti rasa. And so it means their minds are devoid of Krishna consciousness. They eventually fail in their efforts to avoid the sense gratification. In other words, they fall down and they come down and they start doing mundane welfare work or something. They can't stay on the platform of Brahmabhuta. But the devotees who are personalists, there's always so many varieties of services to do for Krishna and ways of thinking Krishna and glorifying Krishna. The Mayavadis are nirvishesh. Nirvishesh means no details. The absolute truth is this brilliant white light. You see? There's no pain there. There's no birth, old age, disease, and death. That's where we want to go. That's Brahman. We are Brahman. Thou art that. Tattvamasi. You are Brahman. I am Brahman. Let's be Brahman. And that's the place of peace, of cessation of all miseries. Yeah, but it's also the cessation of anything positive too. There's no chanting. There's no feasting. There's no celebrating. There's no Krishna, and therefore there's no you don't know your spiritual form either. It's an artificial state for the soul, just as this conditioned state is artificial. So this is the verse from Bhagavatam. It says, they may rise up, a very few, through great austerities, can repress the impetus of the senses and the mind, and reach up to Brahman this way. But eventually they all fall down, because they are averse to serving Krishna's lotus feet. So this is the only way that we can be saved from the trap of Maya, her whole job is to convince us that, yeah, you can enjoy. But Narayan Swami tells the story of his father. His father was practically dying, he was very ill, he had nothing. But he could still taste a little bit, so they would put little gumdrops on his tongue and said, oh, lemon, cherry, was that strawberry? That was his, and he was about to leave his body, and that was his meditation. Somehow I can still enjoy, It's really tragic. Of course, Buddy Rai was there. I'm sure he was chanting Hare Krishna and trying to get him. But the point is that the whole enterprise of trying to enjoy in this material world ultimately is a very bad bet. It's a bad investment. You're being victimized by Maya, and that's her job. But Krishna comes as himself. He sends his emissary. He gives his book to teach us. You don't have to live like that. You don't have to surrender to this illusion. You can connect to me, and and if you're really serving me with love, I'll protect you from Maya's wiles. In the 7th chapter, we have this wonderful verse, Daivi Esha, Gunamahi, Mama Maya Doratjaya, Mameviye Papadyante Maya Me Tantarantite. That this material energy of mine, which is very bewildering, is divine because it comes from me. Gunamahi, made of the 3 gunas, goodness, passion, ignorance. And impossible for one to cross beyond on it by his own effort. But if someone surrenders unto me, he can easily cross beyond it. Because that Maya Devi is Krishna's servant. And as soon as she sees that you're actually serving Krishna and sincerely trying to serve him, she backs off. She doesn't attack you in the same way, because she's ultimately his servant. So this is what's being described here. And this is the only way to get real peace. Let's go on, because there's a very important thing I want to explain to you in the next purport. So this is like winding up. This 71st verse kind of summarizes the ideas on the previous verses. Vihaya kamanyak sarvan pumang chadati nikspraha nirmamo nadahankara sashanti marigachati. A person who has given up all desires for sense gratification, who lives free from desires, who has given up all sense of proprietorship and is devoid of false ego, he alone can attain real peace. To become desireless, this is vihaya kama, no desires, no material desires. To become desireless means not to desire anything for sense gratification. In other words, desire for becoming Krishna conscious is actually desirelessness. To understand one's actual position as the eternal servitor of Krishna, without falsely claiming this material body to be oneself, and without falsely claiming proprietorship over anything in the world, is the perfect stage of Krishna consciousness. One who is situated in this perfect stage knows that because Krishna is the proprietor of everything, everything must be used for the satisfaction of Krishna. Arjuna did not want to fight for his own sense satisfaction, but when he became fully Krishna conscious, he fought because Krishna wanted him to fight. Now this is an example of a perfect storm, kind of, in Prabhupada's use of the language in such a way that really, I think, we probably don't know what he just meant here. This sense, Arjuna did not want to fight for his own sense satisfaction. Now that seems to be completely clear. He didn't want to fight for his sense satisfaction. But that's not what Prabhupada meant. What he means here is that the reason Arjuna did not want to fight was for his own sense satisfaction. You understand? And so, hopefully, the editing changes. What does your book say? No. Your book says what? Arjun?
Arjuna wanted to satisfy his own senses by not fighting, but when he became fully Krishna conscious, he fought because Krishna wanted him to fight.
That's exactly right. So do you have is that your own book? Huh. Well, that's a very late printing because we made that correction. Yeah, that's the whole idea. Arjun wanted to satisfy his own senses by not fighting. Now, doesn't that sound like what he was doing in the first chapter? You remember? Yeah. So it sounds perfectly right. But it's a peculiar use of this word "not." It often gets us into trouble. I gave an example in trying to explain it. Just bear with me for like 1 or 2 minutes here. So you have a new Bhakta Joe, okay? Now let's not use Bhakta Joe because we have a Bhakta Joe. Bhakta Blake. That's it. Bhakta Blake. So this is like in the old days when we had a lot of Bhaktas and we had a lot of Bhaktins too. So, and they had rented like the whole building of Bhaktins, and the men lived here. So Bhakta Blake has developed a little attraction for Bhaktin Susan. It happens. He's trying to be a brahmachari. So one day someone says, Bhakta Blake did not come to the Sandhya Arti, is the last Arti. We're not here usually. It's the one at 6 o'clock, the one before the final Arti. It used to be that the whole temple would gather when I joined for Mangal Arti and Sandhya Arti, and it was ecstatic. We had a whole song, special song, Ki Bajaya Jaya Gora Hachanda. I'll teach you that. So anyway, we all get together. So one day, it's that time of the Artik, and it says, "Oh, Bhakta Blake did not come to the Sandhya Artik because he wanted to see Susan." What did I say, Susan? Yeah. So now, what does that mean? Does it mean that Bhakta Blake didn't come to the Artik and he met Susan in the park? Bhakta Blake did not come to the Mangal Artik, or come to the Sandhya Artik because he wanted to see Susan. Or does it mean that Bhakta Blake is a strict brahmachari? Bhakta Blake did not come to the Sandhya Artik to see Susan. You see the difference? You can with the inflection you can see it, but on the page you can't see it. You don't get the inflection. Bhakta Blake didn't come to the Mangal Sandhya to see Susan. He came because he wanted to see Radha Giridhari. She was there, he was there, but he wasn't looking at her. He's doing fine. Leave him alone. Or he didn't come. Where's Bhakta Blake? He's in the park. The same sentence. Bhakta Blake didn't come to the Sandhya Arti because he wanted to see Susan. You see it? So this is the tricky English language. And Prabhupada, English was not his native language, so sometimes these things happen. So we're trying to change this. I have to try to convince the board that this is the proper word. So okay, so we're going to read it as you have it there. How does it read there again?
Arjuna wanted to satisfy his own senses by not fighting, but when he
Yes, exactly. Okay, Arjuna wanted to satisfy his own senses by not fighting, which is when you read chapter 1 and 2, you see that's what's going on. He wanted. But when he became fully Krishna conscious, he fought because Krishna wanted him to fight. For himself, there was no desire to fight. But for Krishna, the same Arjuna fought to his best ability. Real desirelessness is desire for the satisfaction of Krishna, not an artificial attempt to abolish desires. The living entity cannot be desireless or senseless, but he does have to change the quality of the desires. A materially desireless person certainly knows that everything belongs to Krishna. Isha Pashamidam Sarvam, that's from the Isha Upanishad, which means everything belongs to Krishna. And therefore he does not falsely claim proprietorship over anything. This transcendental knowledge is based on self-realization, namely knowing perfectly well that every living entity is an eternal part and parcel of Krishna in spiritual identity, and that the eternal position of the living entity is therefore never on the level of Krishna or greater than him. This understanding of Krishna consciousness is the basic principle of real peace. So this is kind of summarizing this whole idea of becoming truly peaceful. Isn't there some line in the Bible, the peace that passeth all understanding? I think there is something like that. And that's what we're talking about here. It's an unbreakable peace. In other words, even if someone's killing you, you're not freaking out. Your mind is so strong from Krishna consciousness that you're just saying, okay, the body's finished, goodbye. I'm still with Krishna. You can imagine how strong you have to be, but that's what Krishna consciousness can lead to. And that's actual peace. And then, as he said earlier, how can there be real happiness without peace? Peace is kind of a prerequisite to real lasting happiness. You can have peak experiences, but then the next moment, you're depressed or this or that, But we want steady. There's this thing called sthai bhava. You read about it in Nectar of Devotion. Steady ecstasy. You can hardly imagine it, but that's what we're aiming for. Krishna consciousness is a process to perfect one's life. And that means constant happiness, and then on top of that, peak experiences, and then come back to the ordinary sthai bhava, or steady ecstasy that you're normally experiencing. And finally leave this body altogether and go back to the spiritual world. Varieties of happiness. Mike. Mike for Mike.
So what you're saying, I really feel it, because when I first came to this whole thing, many, many years ago, of course, it dawned on me when I read that Prabhupada's first adherents were these ex-burned out hippies. Uh-huh. And it made total sense to me, because previously what they were really searching for was that eternal high, that consistent high.
Oh, for sure.
But they were searching it through drugs.
Yeah, through drugs.
And they knew when they burned out that they can't get it. You can't stay high all the time. It's impossible. Even if you had endless money and endless supply, it's not going to happen. You come down just because your mind can't. You know what I mean? So
I know exactly what you're talking about.
That's why it was so easy. Okay, first they heard him chanting in the park. What is this? The chanting sounds just. And then when they got it, they were like, "Wow, this!" I believe they were like, "This is what we were looking for."
Well, you may.
So
I don't. Have you read the Lilamrita yet?
No.
Yeah, you'll find.
Really, the ultimate drug they found is devotion.
You'll find that.
Ends.
Let me say this. You'll find that they suggested to Prabhupada that they popularize their little storefront by printing a pamphlet, a little flyer, and the title of the flyer was "Stay High Forever." That they passed out widely to the hippies and the. Yes. He said, "Fine, this is what we used to call a natural high, the supernatural high." So yes, it was very much Krishna arranged that Prabhupada arrive at just that time and in just that place. He was there in 1967 for the Summer of Love, in San Francisco, which was amazing. That's where it all came together, thousands and thousands. The Lower East Side, it was not quite as. I was there in Lower East Side. So yes, the living entity is searching for that high, or that intense experience of ecstasy and love that you can't find on the material plane. And so, but if you don't know about this, then you're going to look for it in someplace else, and you'll be disappointed. And that's what we've been doing forever, for the last million births. Even the animals. I mean, they don't know what they're doing, but they certainly want to be happy. They want to experience sex, whatever. But it's all in the context of imminent or destruction at any time. Like I take my walk. And I try to look at the ground. If it's dark, I have my flashlight. I don't want to step on any bugs, And you see them every so often. There's a cricket. They come and they tend to jump, right? They're jumping out of the way. And I'm an enormous threat. I'm like an atom bomb for them. They don't know anything. They just know the danger. And then if they survived, says, they don't probably think about it, but they're back to finding their mate or finding something to eat. So the human life is much more sophisticated, but it's ultimately the same thing. Without any means of contacting the transcendence, we're simply running through, and in this age especially, we're liable to lose this human form of life, so we should use it wisely. All right, that was the next to last verse. Let's read, finish the chapter. Text 72. Esha Brahmi Stiti Partha Nainam Prapya Vamuyati Stitvasyam Antakalepi Brahmanirvana Mrichati. That is the way of spiritual and godly life, after attaining which a man is not bewildered. If one is thus situated even at the hour of death, one can enter into the kingdom of God. Purport. One can attain Krishna consciousness or divine life at once, within a second. Or one may not attain such a state of life even after millions of births. It is only a matter of understanding and accepting the fact. Katvanga Maharaj attained this state of life just a few minutes before his death by surrendering unto Krishna. Nirvana means ending the process of materialistic life. According to Buddhist philosophy, there is only void after the completion of this material life. But the Bhagavad Gita teaches differently. Actual life begins after the completion of this material life. For the gross materialist, it is sufficient to know that one has to end this materialistic way of life. But for persons who are spiritually advanced, there is another life after this materialistic life. Before ending this life, if one fortunately becomes Krishna conscious, he at once attains the stage of Brahma Nirvana. There is no difference between the kingdom of God and the devotional service of the Lord. Since both of them are on the absolute plane, to be engaged in the transcendental loving service of the Lord is to have attained the spiritual kingdom. In the material world, there are activities of sense gratification, whereas in the spiritual world, there are activities of Krishna consciousness. Attainment of Krishna consciousness, even during this life, is immediate attainment of Brahman. And one who is situated in Krishna consciousness has certainly already entered into the kingdom of God. Brahman is just the opposite of matter. Therefore, Brahmi Stiti means not on the platform of material activities. Devotional service of the Lord is accepted in the Bhagavad Gita as the liberated stage. Sagunan samatitjaitan brahma bhuyaya kalpate. This is from the end of the 14th chapter. Therefore, Brahmi Stiti is liberation from material bondage. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur has summarized this second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita as being the contents for the whole text. In the Bhagavad Gita, the subject matters are Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, and Bhakti Yoga. In the second chapter, Karma Yoga and Jnana Yoga have been clearly discussed, and a glimpse of Bhakti Yoga has also been given as the contents for the complete text. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports of the second chapter of the Srimad Bhagavad Gita in the matter of its contents. So Brahma Nirvana, this is going to come up in the next chapter, especially chapter 5. And it's interesting because Nirvana is a word that is associated with the Buddhists, right? Prabhupada mentions here. But Nirvana, Prabhupada said, what does Nirvana mean? It says finished. It says finished. What's finished? Well, the material involvement is finished. But the Buddhists take it to the extreme. It says ultimately everything is finished. The ideal is void, is it voidness. But there's no void, as Prabhupada famously said, there's no void anywhere in Krishna's creation. Krishna is all-pervading. He's omniscient and omnipresent and omnipotent. So void is artificial, as well as the Mayavadi idea of merging into the oneness and losing your identity. You know, neither of them is actually what we're looking for. But here, Krishna says Brahma Nirvana. This is the spiritual kingdom of God. In other words, Nirvana means materialistic life is finished, but not that your senses are finished and that you have no activities, no body, no form, no interaction with others. That's not finished. There's the pure state of that is taking place in the spiritual kingdom. And we can read about it miraculously in the Srimad Bhagavatam and other books that the Goswamis have written. What's actually going on there? And the more that we become enthralled with that and attracted and living the life of a devotee, the closer we are to ending this long sojourn in the material world that's caused us so much suffering. So this Bhagavad Gita is as Prabhupada said, you can read it every day, which we are, at least Monday, Wednesday, Tuesday, and find new things in it. There's always something new. Because it deals with the most, intrinsic truths that you're living. You're changing every day, so when you read it every day, you see it with different eyes gradually, especially if you're progressing in Krishna consciousness. So this is, I don't know how many times we've been through since I've been here. I've been here since '89. At least maybe 10 times we've been through the Bhagavad Gita. Never gets old. Never say, okay, that's enough of the Bhagavad Gita. There's always new things to find and, to realize. Okay, any final comments, questions? I'll give you the poem, the verse I wanted to give you yesterday, and I thought I should have given you that one. You ready for it? So? Okay. This is near the very end of the Krishna Karnamrita, a beautiful verse. They're all beautiful. This is especially beautiful. Jaya 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 Deva 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 Tribhavana Mangala Divya Nama Deha Jaya 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 Deva Krishna Deva Shabana Mano Nayanama Tavatara. Now whenever you see repetition, especially 3 times, it's a high emotion, high intensity, so he's almost through with his Krishna Karnamrita. He says, "Oh, glory, 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 Lord, oh, glory unto thee, who with thy holy name bless all 3 worlds and set them free. Oh, glory, glory, glory unto thee, O Krishna Dev, whose nectar floods our ears and eyes and hearts in endless waves." This is what he's experiencing. And interestingly enough, he was physically blind. There's a whole story behind that. But he has so many verses about seeing Krishna. There was one, you may have heard of this, but you remember him. Mahavishnu Maharaj. You remember Mahavishnu? You don't remember, Suresh? It's because you're getting old. You were here. Anyway, he used to be here. And I think he spent most of his time here before he took sannyas, if I remember. Then sometime. So he is a disciple, was a disciple, he's now passed on, of Shivaram Swami in England. So the etiquette is you don't take disciples if your spiritual master is on the planet. But he was preaching so nicely, he took sannyas, and so many people wanted to take initiation from him. So he wasn't giving official initiation, but he would have some servants or something, and he would give them nicknames, like their names. So he had one servant. His name was Taralavalocana. Taralavalocana means his eyes are always moving, quickly here and there. So I said, Maharaj, that's from a verse in the Krishna Karnamrita. And he was fascinated. He really loved the shlokas, So this is that verse. Tadidamapanantam tamala nilam tadadavilocana tarka viramam mutata bhakta chanda bimbam mukata vena vilasa jivatam me. So he's saying Tadidamapanantam tamala ninam, that he's saying, oh, now this my Lord has come before me. Tadidamapanantam, he's approaching me. Tamala nilam, he has the blackish complexion like a tamal tree. This is a common analogy. Tadadavilocana, his eyes are moving here and there, looking at the cows and the gopis and everyone. Tarakaviramam, and those eyes are the irises are as beautiful as stars, like stars, Tarakaviramam, very delightful. Mudita bhakta chanda bimbam. His face is full like the autumn moon and very, very joyful. Mudita bhakta chanda bimbam mukata venu vilasi jivatame. He's holding the flute to his lips, playing it very delightfully. He is my very life energy, my force. Jivatam, mama jivatam. So this is how the devotees enjoy by enlivening each other with glorification of Krishna and opportunities to serve Krishna. And so there's an unlimited variety, an unlimited reservoir of that. I remember when I was working on the Bhagavatam in Miami in the 80s, and we finally came to the 10th canto, and so we came to the 35th chapter of the 10th canto. This is all the songs of the gopis, and they're the ideal devotees. He said, "Oh, watch out! Don't think too much of it." But mostly, there's nothing, no harm in it. I mean, there's certain passages you want to, keep confidential. But these songs, like they sing, how does it go? Handa chittam abalashanutedam, hara hasa udasista the vidyut, nandasuna nayamata janana, narmado yahikuja the venu, vindasova de vishamaka gavo venu bada vita chetas ara, tanta dashtaka balada the karna, nidadadika the chittam vivasan. You imagine one little gopi maybe pulls out a little drum, from a satchel as she's playing along. It's got a nice beat. So what they're describing there is Hanta. Just see how amazing it is, oh girls. Hanta chittam abalashan. Listen to this. How amazing. Hanta chittam abalashan. Hara hasa urasista the vidjit. That Krishna's smile is so beautiful. It's like a pearl necklace, Or it can mean that his pearl necklace reflects his smile like that. As Sridhar Swami has given different interpretations. Hara hasa urasista the vidjit. Nanda suna ayamata jananam. The son of Nanda. He delights all the people with his, flute and everything. When he plays the flute very nicely. And all the animals very far in the hills, they listen to that flute. Suddenly they're stunned in ecstasy. And they just stand there like they're so still. They're like pictures in a painting or something, drinking in that nectarian song of Krishna's flute. And the whole thing, the flute is very prominent, the effects of the flute, Okay, it's time to get ready for Artik. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you for your attention. And thank you for our participants online. Hare Krishna for attending. I'm sorry?